welcome to Helena Speaks Life. We are in a new season, and today we're going to be talking about some real estate. Amen. We're going to talk real estate. So today I have, oh my goodness, a wonderful guest. She's been so gracious to even say yes to this. She's a busy woman, y'all, but she took the time to talk to us today, Ms. Keisha Barnes. We're going to talk about real estate. So, ma'am, can you introduce yourself and just give us some background about yourself, as much as you want to share or not share, whatever?
Well, I'm Keisha, as you said. We've known each other. Well, I've known you since you were like a baby, but I was still kind of sort of a baby.
Yes.
I started off my career actually in law enforcement. I graduated from college, and of course, graduating from college, you want to, run out here and get a job and alleviate the stress that your parents are putting on you about becoming gainfully employed. So I ended up at DOJ on the law enforcement side, and I was doing that for about 10 or 12 years. But during that time, I was always interested in real estate. So I actually started studying for the real estate exam probably in 2007, but just like got discouraged and put it off. I told myself, okay, this is just way too much information to try to remember to test for it. And come to find out, it was not that difficult. Like years down the line, to come to find out it was not that difficult. At least on Maryland side of things. DC, I have to test for, and Virginia, I have to test for. But I've been in real estate for about 2 years now.
Okay.
I've been on the investment side of things, exploring the investment side of things for probably like 10 to 15 years or something like that. So I'm very familiar with the market, especially in the DC metro area, more so DC and PG County and parts of Montgomery County. And then now, of course, Anne Arundel, since my parents, eventually moved out to Bowie. So, and Crofton is right there. So I've been selling and assisting buyers with real estate for like the last 2 years. I always had a passion to try to assist people in realizing home ownership, namely because the area of the country period has always had a housing crisis, in my opinion. And I just always feel like people should have accessible housing, and it should be affordable in some form or fashion. It's not so much now.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. But I'm finding along in my journey that I'm either preparing people or helping people get to that place by providing them with, the knowledge, the facts, and the tools, or even access to people to help them transition into getting into a home or actually applying for a loan. I'm either educating people and preparing them to get there, or they're already there and they just need to know, what the process is. So they either have their savings, their credit score is okay, employment is good, or even like for business owners, they've been, in business for a while and they are accumulating income and they're able to transition into purchasing a house. So that right now is my passion. Like anytime someone gets pre-approved, I'm very excited. I get so excited. So we can go out and start looking at houses.
So what is pre-approval? Like break that down if you could, like for a house.
So the pre-approval process is basically, that's actually one of the first steps. So I would tell people, if you come to me and you say, okay, I want to, purchase a home, one of my first questions will be, okay, have you been pre-approved? So your pre-approval is basically how much house the bank is willing to bet on you that you can afford, right? Um, and the reason why I prefer and request and pretty much will not go out with someone until they have that is because you don't want to start looking at $600,000 homes and you only can afford that $350,000 house. You're wasting your time. You're wasting the seller's time. And then on top of that, you know, you kind of sort of get discouraged because you start seeing things that you really want, but you're just not there yet. And I always tell people, like, your first house is not your last house.
Okay.
You know, your first house can always set you up for your next house. So
Good. That's really good. I
yeah.
think I'm guilty. I'm guilty of that. Like, oh, all these gorgeous houses. And I be looking on the apps and stuff, and I'm like, man, they want 750 some thousand. It's like, ooh, I don't think my budget is there right now. But so
Right.
would you suggest somebody look for something like based on that pre-approval? Go get pre-approved, basically.
Yeah, definitely go to the lender. First step, get to the lender. Like you can always call me and we can have a discussion about down payment assistance programs or the various financing options, various loan options. But I'll always refer you to, and the thing about me is I will try to match the person with the lender I know they can probably communicate well with, because everybody has a different personality, right? So I'll always refer you out to a lender so you can ask more specific questions, because that's not my wheelhouse.
Okay.
And I don't want to, even though I may be right, I may know a loan backwards and forwards, but there's still a liability there for me. So I prefer, you know, referring it out to the lender, because that is their area and that's what, you know, they get paid to do.
So this is just a random question. So what if a person wants to do like an all cash offer and they have the money and don't need a lender or doesn't need the bank to be involved? Like, how does that work? Have you ever came across that, or is that?
Oh yeah, that's perfect. That's
Okay.
generally perfect in this particular market.
Okay.
Like, well, I shouldn't say it's perfect, but for the most part, because cash is so liquid, it is more advantageous to the seller if someone came, because they wouldn't have to wait 30 to 45 days for the lending institution to do what it has to do. Sometimes it can take 14 days with the lender. Sometimes it just cannot. Sometimes it can take longer than 45 days. But when you're looking at cash, it's so liquid, you're able to you're able to close a lot faster. Typically what happens is the person will just wire the money overnight. So it should take about 12 to 24 to 48 hours for the funds to hit the seller's account. And that's it. I know some cash buyers, when you're looking at a cash buyer, you're typically looking at an investor, or someone who has invested in the investor, or someone who's just, you know, well off or is a high equity, like they came out of a house. Like my parents, for example, my parents are sitting on a lot of equity, so they can take the cash from the sale from their house and, you know, purchase another house without a problem.
Okay.
Typically though, in terms of an investment, you may get investors who want to do like a home inspection. Some will do an appraisal. I would always suggest an appraisal. I would always suggest a home inspection.
Okay. Okay.
You want to know what your asset, but investors are a little bit more riskier. For someone who was like purchasing a house with cash to move in, like your average buyer who has the cash, of course, I will always suggest the inspection or the appraisal, you know, so that way you can see if you're not paying too much for a house, one, and then also to see what issues, you know, may you may not be able to see with that open with your eyes with the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next question I have is, how does a person know when they're ready to buy a house? Like, how could you could say I could tell you're ready because this, and that, or do you kind of, what are your thoughts?
I think there are a number of things that go into play with that. Of course, there's maturity, there's your emotional side, your mental state, your
Yeah.
spiritual side as well.
Mhm.
I think that all ties into it. I know for me, I was just, my decision to purchase a house was, okay, I don't want to have to deal with my leasing office um, deciding when they're going to, repair something.
Oh
If
yeah.
I was going to tear something up, or if I needed something repaired, I want it to be done when I need it to be done.
Yeah.
I kind of sort of learned that's not necessarily the case when you purchase a house. Of course, you have to schedule and wait for a contractor to come out. But I think because I'm aware that of what the process is or what's going on, it goes over a lot better for me. But in terms of someone has to, I always say you're going to have to be mature and you're going to have to know how to manage your finances, because that owning a home is like your largest purchase. It's going to be your most important investment,
Yeah.
right? And like I said, your house can set you up for the future, literally. And it comes down to even like where you purchase the house can set you up. Some areas appreciate a lot faster than others do. And that's when a real estate agent comes in and they can evaluate the particular market and let what's what in that particular area. But maturity, you're going to have to be mature enough to keep up with the house, the maintenance of the house, lawn care, if there's a lawn, if there's an HOA, you're going to have to be responsible for paying the HOA. Um, of course, your mortgage payments, you never want to default on your loan. You don't want your HOA to put a lien on your house. So I would say maturity. Take a look at your finances. Are you financially stable? Do you have consistent income coming in? Whether it be retirement, your W-2, or if you're 1099 contractor. You want to make sure you have enough funds sitting in the bank, uh, so much so that the bank is willing to make an investment, quote unquote, if you want to call it an investment, or take a risk on you to purchase the house.
Okay. So how much should be in your bank account or something, like if you're looking to buy a house, like within the next year or so, or
I would say in this particular market, at least 7% of your purchase price. And I say that because you want to have down payment funds, you want to have funds for closing costs, depending on how this particular market shifts, and then also what's going on in the courts. You may find that some sellers are not willing to pay the commission for the other side. So the buyer may have to make up the difference in that. Um, and then, of course, inspections, and if you have to pay for penalties or points and things like that, repairs. Even if in this particular market, we're finding that some buyers are paying for the moving costs for the seller, or they're actually paying the first couple of months of mortgage for the seller. I've read an article where someone bought the other person's house. Yeah. So
well, all right.
yeah, this particular market is very interesting. I would say you're going to have a significant amount of savings saved up to be competitive, to push your offer through, because there may come a time where there are multiple offers and there is an appraisal issue. Are you willing to make up the gap in the appraisal? So some people are paying upwards of 20, 30, some even $100,000 over this price for a house because inventory is so low.
Wow. So is it a seller's market or a buyer's market?
Oh,
That's
definitely a seller's market.
okay.
Definitely a seller's market now. I foresee it being a seller's market for a while. I know people expect the market to crash. The data is just not showing that for me. It's not, if it says something different, if it shows me something different, of course I'm like, yeah. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I would kind of sort of prefer it that way, because right now everybody's competing. It's like everybody's competing for the same house. You have so many buyers on the market, and yeah, interest rates have increased. Yeah, home values have increased, but there's still enough people in the market now who are still able to purchase. But inventory is so low, and builders can't build enough new homes to make up that gap. So it's definitely a seller's market. It's an interesting seller's market, but it will be one, I would say, for like at least another 4 or 5 years. I don't think home values will increase as they did during COVID, like at the height of COVID. They'll level off and slow down. We already know for sure the Fed is going to increase interest rates, but I do think interest rates will decrease a little in 2 years. So that'll give people who will purchase now the opportunity. Say someone purchased with the interest rate of 7%, they may, depending on what their financial situation is, they may be able to refinance 2 years from now and get a lower interest rate.
Okay. So what do we need to know? Tell us what we need to know in terms of buying a home, real estate, like just for people that don't know anything. What wisdom could you give us? What knowledge can you give us?
So if you are going to buy a home in this particular market or any market, to be honest with you, I would suggest first putting yourself in the right frame of mind, because whether it's a buyer or seller's market, it's going to be a roller coaster, because you're dealing with different personalities. You're going to be dealing with listing agents, buyer's agents, sellers. Sellers are going to be dealing with buyers. And then some people are going to want some things that just aren't going to be given in that particular market. I mean, it just is what it is. Like right now, we have a lot of as-is homes, and the seller's not willing to make any repairs or make any concessions and things like that. But the first thing is just to ensure that you are in the right headspace. Every day is not going to be perfect. But just make sure you're mature enough to want to embark on this journey, because a lot of people get discouraged. Then have a conversation with a real estate agent or a realtor, and then also a conversation with the lender to see where you are. Those are your first 3 steps, I would say.
Okay.
Other than exploring what your finances look like. Once you get pre-approved, depending on what program you're in or what options you pursue, you can go out there and start looking at a house, and then be ready to close within 60 to 90 days, depending on how fast you find a house. When you're out searching for homes, I would say look at the actual structure of the home. Ask questions about the machinery in the house, the plumbing, how old is the roof, how old is the HVAC. Look to see if there are visible leaks in the ceiling, if there's discoloration in the bathrooms. Try to feel how the floor is structured, because sometimes we'll have floors that are just uneven, they slope downward. Yesterday I was in a house and the floor was actually soft in the kitchen, so we know there was water there was water damage somewhere, significant water damage somewhere, for the floor to slope like it was, and then to also not really have significant support, in my opinion. Okay. I'll look at those things, line up already in advance who your title company will be, who your inspector will be. The appraisal side is on the bank. So everybody's at the mercy of the bank when it comes to that. But have those things lined up. That way, when you submit your offer, you're ready to go.
Okay. I have a personal friend who her and her husband are looking for homes, and they have the money. They've been approved for a good amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
and they have gone to at least two. They've gone to a few homes, but at least two houses they put money. They put an offer in,
Mm-hmm.
and the buyer, I mean the seller, decided to go with somebody else, and they've put in even more than the asking. So what would you say to a person that they're getting a little weary because they're finding those homes, they're taking these tours, and like it's just kind of getting a little weary. And at this point, there's no other houses to look at. Like the houses right
Yeah,
there.
every house just pretty much looks the same, right?
Yeah.
They may need to take a step back. And when I say take a step back, they may need to take like a day or two to just breathe.
Okay.
And then maybe have a discussion with their agent in regards to strategy. They could also consider a new construction. If they've been approved for a significant amount of money, and depending on the area they want to move into, they can consider a new construction. They can also consider purchasing some land and then building on that land. A couple of people have foregone resale homes and have just started looking at new constructions and purchasing land and just building on the land. I haven't heard of it yet, but I do know of a couple of areas in the state, and sorry, not in the state, but in the country, where individuals have been bidding on new construction homes. So because builders aren't can't build as fast, you're essentially bidding on the home as you would like a resale.
Wow.
So it can be competitive in that way. But I would say have a conversation with the agent, start there, and discuss strategy. They may want to have the agent ask the listing agent, what's the seller's biggest concern? Like, what do they want out of this transaction?
Right.
And a lot of the times, especially in this particular area, it is money. But if the sellers want to get out the house fast, maybe they need to minimize their contingencies. They also need to take a look at see uh, who's financing the loan. So a lot of people think that it's cool to just go out and just play around on the internet and submit a pre-approval with one of these online lenders, and that's going to be okay when it's really not. Because the thing about it is the DMV area is huge, but it's small, right? And it becomes even smaller when you're dealing with real estate agents and lenders. And in a lot of cases, a lot of agents know the lenders. So if lenders and agents have relationships, of course, the listing agent's going to say, okay, I have a relationship with this particular lender. I know they can close faster, right?
Oh, wow.
Or depending on what program they're utilizing, I've had experience with this particular program and it didn't go so well. This listing agents will tell their sellers that. So have a look at the financing. Who is the financer? If they're local, that is always more advantageous. I will always go with a local lender or lending institution before I branch out to something that's online. I can suggest it as an agent, whether it sits well with the buyer it's going to become a learning experience. Like I've had a couple of say, well, I'm a pre-approved with city. I'm like, great, that's wonderful. But is the loan officer local to the area? If
Mhm.
the loan officer is with Citibank and they're local to the area, okay, that's cool. But if they're not, if they're in Ohio somewhere, it may not work out so well. So yeah, determine what's most important to the seller.
Okay.
Have that discussion. Um, consider who is your lender and whether or not that comes into play. If it's a program, I know a lot of agents are unfamiliar with NACA. So, and then some agents have had a bad experience with NACA.
And what is NACA?
NACA is a purchase program. So it allows individuals to purchase using a conventional loan, still a conventional loan, but it's the process is just a little bit more tedious. Like if I referred you out to a lender today, I know the lender can probably get you pre-approved in 2 days. With NACA, it can take up to a year to get through their program, depending on what your situation is.
Okay.
So then there's like NACA is like the middle person before getting to the underwriter. So not unless you're the type of person who essentially will have your foot on their neck to get things done, then going the traditional route with going directly to even loan officer locally in the bank or a mortgage broker um, to get things done. Let's see what else. They may have to sweeten the pot. Like I said, minimize contingencies. They may, even though they may be offering more, the sellers may know that the home may not appraise. So they have to look at that appraisal gap. Are they willing to pay the gap? If the house is appraised at, if the house is listed at 300,000 and they offering 340, are they willing to still give up that $40,000? Or at least some of it. So they have to, negotiate on that end. Okay. If the sellers are looking for a rent back or something like that, and the rent back is essentially the sellers are asking to stay in a house for a certain period of time, and technically they will prorate the rent, but some people are saying, okay, don't worry about paying the rent, just stay in the house. When it's time for you to move, just move. Okay. Are they willing to pay for moving costs? Things like that to sweeten the pot now.
Okay. It's all about dazzling the seller, making
right. Yeah. What's happening in certain parts of the country, like some agents have said that they've seen a cool down, right? And they've seen homes that are listed, they've seen the list price decrease. And I have seen that. In this area. Okay. I will say that, but I haven't seen a lot of that, right? But then I also attributed that to not listing the house properly, because some sellers some sellers want to list the house at what they believe the house may sell for, okay, without taking into account what the market is saying. They have like this emotional investment in the house, and then also, of course, people want money to go play with.
Yeah.
That they may not be as realistic about the house. So there are a number of things your friends can look at to get them there. But the most important thing is just be patient. It's frustrating. I know they've heard that 1,000,001 times. I will say this. I've been out with buyers, and it seems like we were like looking like for months, right? And then we found this one particular house,
Mhm.
and the wife and her husband, they both fell in love with the house.
Yeah.
That one house that I thought they were going to go for, that's not the house that they went for. That's not the house that they went for, right? And this particular house I did show to someone else, and he liked the house, right?
Uh-huh.
But his offer was rejected. We pretty much submitted the same offer for my second buyers, right?
Yeah.
And their offer was accepted. So I always say that what's for you is for you. That particular house was for that family.
Yeah. Yeah.
I strongly believe in that.
I've heard, and let me know if this is, even correct. I've heard that it's sometimes good to write a letter to the seller about who you are and about your family. Is that something that people do, or is that something that should be done?
They used to do that. The state of Maryland doesn't. Maryland's real estate association, and I believe even in DC and Virginia, they've gotten away with love letters. A couple of states, and I think maybe Realtors National Association of Realtors has pretty much told us not to do so. So here's the thing. Let me explain this before I continue. So you have your real estate agent, right? Anybody can become a real estate agent after passing their real estate exam.
Mhm.
But then there are your realtors, and realtors are people who are held to a higher standard. And they basically follow a code of ethics outlined by the National Association of Realtors.
Okay.
So I'm a realtor who
All right.
is a real estate agent. I mean, essentially that means I'm just paying out more money in fees, but that's what it is. And I believe that's a requirement for I know it's a requirement for those who are associated with the Prince George's County Real Estate Association.
Okay.
Realtors Association. So I believe NAR has gone away the love letters, and the reason why is because it can become discriminatory. People can use it to discriminate race, sexuality, familial status, and things like that. Okay. So I kind of liked it. Like, I saw the value in it, but I also can see how it could be used against someone. I can see how you can also word it where you kind of sort of eliminate some of those things, but to be on the safe side, it's advised not to write up a love letter.
Okay.
Or we used to do videos too. We used to submit videos.
Yeah.
So what your agent can do, and maybe you can suggest this to your friends. Mm-hmm. They can ask the agent if they can present the offer to the sellers. A lot of agents don't ask that. It may not, the listing agent may not allow it. The listing agent may say flat out from the start that they don't allow it, but you never know, They may be able to present the offer to them directly. Okay. That way they can answer any questions that, the sellers may have.
Okay. This is amazing. You are amazing. Okay? You are like informing the people, letting us know what's going on. So they submitted a question, and the question is, what should a person's debt to income ratio be when buying a house?
Okay, so each bank has its own set of requirements, but typically you want your debt to income ratio to be 36% and lower. Okay. Yeah, that way you can get approved, because banks are highly regulated now, more so than they were 2007, 2008, when we had that whole issue with people getting stuck with subprime loans and things like that. So after that, and that housing crash that everyone wants to avoid ever happening again, banks became highly regulated. So I would say like 36 and lower. Okay. Okay. With the about a 620 or higher credit score. Now, we have seen recently the average applicant, that's not saying that anyone hasn't applied with the lower credit score, but the average applicant now has been applying with a 720 credit score.
720. All right. All right. Y'all hear that? Not saying God can't do some things now, but okay, 720. Okay. Okay. This is all good because I remember I had a good dose of reality a couple years ago. And I called you and I said, hey, Keisha, I want to buy a house, girl. I'm looking to get in a house. And you told me the facts. You was like, okay, well, this and that, gotta have this. I'm like, well, I ain't got none of that. Okay. I gotta get myself together. You have to understand where you are, accept it, it's okay.
Mhm.
And then you learn and you grow and you get your ducks in a row. And when you get that home, it's gonna be all so much sweeter because of
Right.
what you've put into it, the work that you've done. And so I'm like, I now have a little bit of a reality check because I thought you could just buy a house. I thought you could just say, hey, I like this house. Like you go and buy a refrigerator from Sears and stuff. I like this one. Can I get this one? Can you wrap it in a bow? And
No, 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 no. Not unless you have like a 770. I joke with my father all the time. Not unless you having like a 8 something credit score and you got all this access to this, that, and the fifth. Like people like that, they can walk in there and get whatever they want. Yeah. The rest of us, we gotta work for it. Yeah, we gotta work for it. But it also depends on what options or what path you're trying to take. Like, there's also like there's a particular lease to own program that I like utilizing, that kind of sort of prepares people for the purchase process. So while they're saving, the program works with helping them increase their credit score, and also the money that they put out monthly in terms of rent. Part of that monthly payment is inclusive of their down payment. So let's say the market value in your area, the rent is like 1,200 or something like that. Not nowadays, we already know that, but let's just say that's what it is. That's the market rate for the rent, but they want you to contribute like another $700 towards your down payment per month. So essentially you're putting out what, $1,900 a month for rent, but it's also inclusive of your down payment. And then also you're working to build your credit. Or there's always, down payment assistance programs and grants, but you also run the risk of having to tap into a higher interest rate with those, because again, they're betting on you to, one, stay in the house, and that's still money that they're loaning you. There's also grant money, depending on whether or not you're a veteran. There's always a VA loan. There's also a USDA loan. A lot of people don't know in Upper Marlboro, in certain parts of Upper Marlboro, you can qualify for what we call an agricultural loan. The house may not be sitting on a farm, but it's sitting in an area that will allow you to utilize USDA financing. There are like a host of options. It's just understanding what option works best for you. There's also NACA. NACA doesn't look at credit score, but they look at your history. But the downside, if you want to look at it as a downside, is that it takes much longer to get through the program, and it can be kind of cumbersome because they have a lot of turnover with the mortgage counselors. So, and like I said, the mortgage counselors are like essentially the middlemen for the actual bank.
So what would you say to people that they love the apps? They love to look at the apps. I'm not gonna mention any apps, but you know what I'm talking about when I say apps, right? The apps that tell you about the different homes and all that. And they look in on HGTV and they're like, I know what's going on in the market, and I get. Would, what would you say to that person? And is it better to go to an agent or
I
really?
would say it's better to go with an agent. I'm not throwing any shade on Zillow. Zillow is its own brokerage now, right? But we found that the information, and even Zillow has quoted itself as saying, "Hey, we misunderstood the market and we screwed up," right?
What about Redfin?
There's
so many different.
I would say if you're working with the agent, have the agent set you up on their portal, right? I set my clients either up directly in the MLS, depending on what they're looking at, or a separate app, right? And then I also have my own app that I give my clients a link to. That way I can see what they're looking at. And that's the good thing about, utilizing an app. That's a good thing about utilizing an app that the agent has, because the agent can go into their back office and see, okay, what is this client looking at? What are they most interested in? What areas are they interested in? What are their what don't they like about a particular house, and what do they like about a particular house? So I would always suggest that if they don't have an app, have them set you up in the MLS. That way they can handpick some homes, or they may just send out homes that are auto sent to you. It depends on how you want it done. I always want to get dialed in with my clients, because I do not believe in wasted time. I really don't, especially now in this market. I just had a discussion with the client today, and I told her, it's like, listen, we're going to have to be hyper focused on what type of home you want. So we're going to have to prioritize the homes that you want to see. So what I do is I go into the portal, I hand select each of my clients' houses. I already know what they don't want. Yeah. I may shoot out some that may be on the iffy side and see what they say. But if they say, no, absolutely not, I don't want a house without a garage, I don't want a split level or something like that, I don't want a townhouse, I don't want a condo. If they're absolute about that, of course I'm gonna just eliminate those. And then I also dial into the areas that they want to move into. So I would have them either do one of those, get the agent's app, or get set up, or both set up on the agent's portal. I wouldn't rely on Zillow. I wouldn't necessarily rely on Redfin. I wouldn't necessarily rely on Redfin, because when it comes to the selling side of Redfin, what sellers don't know is they're not actually saving. So there's this thing where if you sell with us, we'll give you a discount on your purchase, but that's not, when you run the numbers, it really doesn't come out that way. So I'm just leave it at that. I'm gonna just leave it at that. But the numbers on when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, well, this estimate says this, Mike." Yeah. So this estimate is wrong. Okay. And this is the reason why this estimate is wrong. Mm-hmm. Because no one came out to look at your house to see what the current state of the house is. It may, take into account what the solds are online, but still no one came out to the house to look at the house, to evaluate the house, to tell you, hey, yeah, your floor, if someone jumps, they can go right through it. That's, your roof hasn't been replaced and you got this plumbing issue. Meanwhile, your neighbor has done a full reno, and that's the reason why they can sell the house at what they sell the house for. So. Okay. All right. Is there anything, and now I just want you to just dump on us everything you want to say. What, just talk. Listen, right, I really don't, I know a lot of people are discouraged about the market. A lot of people entered the market and now they had to exit the market because of affordability, right? Um, it's discouraging. Um, and like I said earlier, I don't expect home values to decrease, but I don't expect them to increase as much. If someone absolutely has to wait to purchase a home when you're ready. You know, don't go out there attempting to buy a house and you can't afford it. There are a lot of people who are in homes, they got pre-approved, right? And pre-approval doesn't necessarily mean you can afford the house. You know, you can be house rich and cash poor. You don't want that to happen. But take a serious assessment of your finances and determine what you can afford. If you don't think you can afford it right now, then just wait it out. Even though I always say that real estate is a long game. If you have the cash now, if you have the ability now, I would say go ahead and jump into the market. I definitely would say that. It may be scary, it may be frustrating, but if you have the means to do it, then do it. And if you don't, sit down with someone who can help strategize to get you closer to purchasing a lot faster. Don't just sit there and wait until interest rates drop, right? Because you're still looking at higher home values. Sit down with somebody and plan. Start saving. Set up a separate account if you have to, that you will not tap into. Don't even get a card for that account if that's how you have to set it up. And just throw money into that particular account. That way you have money set aside for your purchase expenses. And there's just really just stay prayed up. You really have to, especially those who are already in the market right now and they're getting discouraged. Also determine whether or not your agent is the person that you really want to work. Is your agent working for you? You know, and then also be patient with your agent, because you're definitely not the only person that the agent's working with. So be a little bit, give them some grace. If you have concerns, schedule a meeting with your agent and say, hey, I don't think we're communicating as we should. Can you tell me what the plan is so we can finally get into a house? And if your agent doesn't have a plan, that's a red flag in and of itself. You know, if they're just showing you houses for the sake of showing houses and don't have a plan, and you yourself, you gotta also have a plan yourself. Yeah. Those are two red flags. You both need a plan. But stay encouraged. Just stay hyper focused and be as strategic as you can. It's like, I don't want to compare it to, because it's not war, but it's definitely a game. It's definitely a housing game.
Okay. Yeah. So for those that are interested in becoming real estate agents or realtors,
pray.
Pray.
Let me tell you, I came into the market. I came into real estate at the beginning of COVID, right? I don't think at the time anyone expected COVID to be what COVID is and what occurred. I don't think anyone expected the market to be as affected by COVID, right?
Mm-hmm. Everything has been affected.
Yes. So, going into it now and knowing that inventory will still remain low for a period of time, for at least another 2 to 5 years, right? Because builders just can't build it that fast.
You don't want
then there's no
build that fast. You want them to take their time, right?
What?
To build it right.
Well, listen, way back when, it took a while to build houses. It took a while, right? Mm-hmm. Now it don't take that long. As I had the same discussion with a friend of mine he works at an auto body shop, right? And I was talking about the vehicle I had at the time in comparison to like vehicles now. And he compares vehicles now. He says, they're built with like toothpicks and they just have all this computer stuff going on in them, right?
Yeah.
So we have smart houses, but when we go and decide that we're going with new construction, guess what? We're going to make sure we have our own inspector. I don't care what the builder says. I don't care what the sales agent says. We are going to have an inspector. It may cost you extra, right?
Worth it.
But you want to be in the house, even though there may be a warranty. You want to know that you're like a drywall inspection. You want to know that there's not mold in the walls. A lot of people don't consider that. A lot of people say, okay, I'm gonna just build a new home and there aren't going to be any issues, and come to find out there are issues. Wow. There are issues that should have been caught. And the builder's not going to do it for you because the builder's in the business for the builder. Oh, you know what? To pick back up on the real estate exam. The way I study for the real estate exam, so what for I believe both DC, Virginia, and Maryland use the same tester, right? And so they come out with a bulletin. So instead of studying, of course, I took my course online, right? And I used the CE shop, and it was a pretty solid course. I enjoy it. In fact, I'm using it to study for DC and Virginia's test, right? But when it came down to like the 2 weeks before taking the exam, because I was, just a little anxious, I broke down the test based on what was valued more on the test. So I took the bulletin to see which one is graded higher. And that's how I studied and worked my way back. And so whatever was graded less, it wasn't like I didn't study it at all. But in my mind, I said, okay, well, these will be extra points, but I need to focus on what's graded the most here. DC is, I'm just going to tell you, I don't even know. Anytime I ask someone how to study for the DC exam, I can't really get a solid answer, because for me, it was so easy to study for Maryland, because Maryland state portion is just a lot simpler. But with DC, there's a lot going on in the city in terms of tenancy and rents, and how the tenant has first priority in the event that the landlord wants to sell, and things like that. And it happens. It's also in Baltimore, but I don't sell a lot in Baltimore. So if I had to freshen up on it, I had my Maryland license already, but I can also ask questions, you know. But that's the way I would go about studying. Some people don't like an online course. If online is not for you, don't do it. Go sit in the classroom. But in terms of studying, I would look at what's graded higher first and then work your way back. That way you're just not frustrating yourself. You know what to look for. And then also understand the vocabulary. Once you understand the vocabulary, then you're able to utilize the concepts a lot better. If that makes sense. So joint tenancy, once you know what joint tenancy means, you're able to understand, okay, so if they ask this question, you can see the concept or how they're trying to, trick you in the question.
Okay. Thank you. So one last question, then we're gonna wrap up. To get a real estate agent, does it cost in order like to get a realty? I mean,
It depends.
realtor or real estate agent. It depends. Okay.
It depends. It depends. So typically, I don't say this. I've never put it out there like this since the beginning of starting my career. But a lot of agents say, okay, the seller will pay the buyer's agent, and that may not necessarily be true, because you'll have a buyer's agent who has a set fee, right? So I'm not trying to get into, because I really can't get into that. But a buyer's agent may have a set commission, and what may be typical for the area may not necessarily be what the buyer agent wants. So you'll see sometimes in the MLS, like with these new constructions right now, you'll see you'll see builders saying, okay, the buyer's agent will only get like $5,000 from the sale of a $7,000 house. That's completely unlike the typical 2.5% and 3% that they would normally get from like a resale of a $700,000 house, right? So the buyer's agent may have it written in their contract, hey, you're going to make up the difference of whatever my fee is. I've done it more so with my renters. What a lot of people have to understand is not every agent is selling 2 or 3 houses a month. That's especially not now. And these agents still have to pay mortgage, car note. There are fees that we have to pay just to open the door. We have to pay to have access to the contracts that you guys sign. So there's a lot, and then also advertising and things like that. So when people say, oh, well, you're getting $5,000 from, no. You know how many hands go into that?
Yeah, exactly. But if a person wanted to just hire you as their real estate agent, they don't have to necessarily pay you to go with them around.
It depends. Some agents may assess a consultation fee, a non-refundable consultation fee, or retainer fee. Okay. To be honest with you, I can see that happening a lot more now.
Okay.
Because I just put like $40. I think I was slightly below half a tank. So I just put $40 in my gas tank. So and I'm not just saying that for real estate agents. I really believe that for anyone who's providing a service that involves them traveling, I think people are going to see more so now consultation fees, and even your plumber may say it for an estimate is going to cost you, and they do it now. They've been doing it. It's going to cost for me to come out to the house to run a diagnostic. It's going to cost you $50 or something like that. So I can see that transitioning over into real estate. Okay. I can see that happening now.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much, Keisha, for your time. You have been amazing.
Thank you.
How can we find you on social media? Or if someone's looking and they're ready and they did the assessment of themselves, they're like, I'm responsible, I'm ready. How can I get you as my agent? How can we reach out to you? How can we get you as the agent?
So I am on Instagram and Facebook. My Instagram handle is, I am also on TikTok too. On Instagram, I am your lifting agent because I am also a lifter. So that's YOUR lifting agent. So LIF lift TING agent. Okay. To make sure I didn't leave out a letter. If you want to look me up on Facebook, I am Keisha Barnes, realtor. on there. So you can like just key that in and it should pop up. If not, you can always give me a call. Phone number is 240-753-3573. So I'm very accessible that way.
Everybody, please give her a round of applause. We are so grateful for what you have shared with us. And like you were saying, and I want to just encourage you all, just be patient and take your time, do the research, save the money, pray, and it's going to happen. You will be a homeowner. You will be able to get those keys one day and say, look, I got me a home, y'all. And that's beautiful. I think have your list. If you have desires, put it down, what you want in your home. Have a plan, okay? And refer back to this video. If you've got questions, and if Keisha touched on those things, go ahead, rewind it, listen to it again, and just soak in all the information, okay? Thank you guys. I love you guys. Welcome to season 2 of Helena Speaks Life. I love you guys so much. We're going to get these homes, guys, all right?
Yes. Bye. Thank you.
Yay.
Ain't you tired?